Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the sci-fi role-playing game Bounty Hunter. Written by Guy Sklanders from the How to Be a Great Game Master YouTube channel, Bounty Hunter is a rules-light game. The core book is only 42 pages, it's that short. Now this edition is the Omnibus Edition, which includes a sample world, the Huntari region supplement, as well as a sample adventure, Halcord Minmo. And all of that fits in this enormous 84-page book. Now, one complaint that I do have about this just right off the bat is the physical edition is saddle stapled. I would have preferred that it be a bound edition, but that's a pretty light complaint. And Guy has said that this should soon be available on Drive-Thru-RPG, so if they do it as a print-on-demand there, that's not going to be the case. But at least for this physical edition, it is saddle stapled, and I don't like that. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, I was given my copy of the rulebook as well as a PDF copy by the author in exchange for a fair and honest review. Not only that, but Guy then ran a group of us through a session of Bounty Hunter, which was a lot of fun to play. You can watch our goofy antics on his YouTube channel where he recorded that session. I stuck a link below for that. As the title implies, you get to play bounty hunters in this game, emulating shows like Cowboy Bebop, or I suppose more popularly like The Mandalorian. Say no more, this game sounds right up my alley. It's like my good friend Werner Herzog likes to say, bounty hunting is a complicated profession, and he is right. Now, what makes Bounty Hunter interesting is that it's a diceless role-playing game. Diceless? Huh. Well, I guess the fancy dice tower that I picked up for the occasion can just sit on the shelf unused. That's cool, I guess. So what are we using for this game? Is it playing cards or something? No dice, no cards, nothing like that. Bounty Hunter is based off of an action economy mechanic, which is very different than any other role-playing game that I've ever played. We'll go into the mechanics in a bit, but first let's go over character creation. We get this character sheet, pretty simple. There's also a fillable PDF version available online. Character creation is fast, it's just 9 steps long, and you can do this in just a few short minutes. You go through it, choosing your species, either one provided by the game or one that the game master provides. Next is your birthright, where you grew up, education, last career that you had before becoming a bounty hunter, and your reasoning for becoming a bounty hunter. Each of these gives you one or more skills, such as if you had the birthright of spacer, you gain the skills of navigation and vehicle operations. Then if you were educated at the academy, you gain obscure lore and science skills. A couple things here. Notice with both of these they have blanks, such as with spacer, you choose the name of the ship that you grew up on and the name of your childhood friend. And then at the academy, you name a person that you formed a bond with. I really dig this because as we're making our character, we're simultaneously creating their backstory, complete with contacts and different places that the game master can use, as well as fleshing the character out just a little bit more, and it feels very natural in the process of making that character. And another thing, and I really do like this touch, is under each backstory element, there is a space for you to say how your character felt about whatever that was. This adds personality and depth to the character as they're reflecting on each individual part of their backstory. Skills are noted here. This list is all the skills that are in the game. There is no skill rank. You either have a skill or you don't have that skill. If during the course of character creation you end up with a skill twice, such as my background as a spacer got me navigation and vehicle operations, and then I chose pilot as my most recent career, which also gives me navigation and vehicle operations, I only note each of those once on my sheet as far as skills that I have. And then I take those 2 slots that are left over from being doubled skills, and I choose different skills that I received there instead, such as mounted weapons and engineering, for example. That way, I still have the correct number of starting skills once I begin the game. At the end of character creation, you should have somewhere between 11 and 15 skills for each character. Now, the difference that being is the size of the group determines how many skills you start with. Larger groups, your characters have less skills apiece. Smaller groups, your character begins with more skills apiece. Which makes sense, because in a smaller group, you're going to need some more highly trained characters to fill all those skill gaps, because you ain't got nobody else there to perform those roles. Once skill selection is complete, you then choose a special ability from this list. You might want to choose one that's most appropriate for what your character's role is going to be, such as a ship's captain might have Inspiring Leader, while a group medic might want to have the Doctor ability. Finally, we get to choose some starting gear from our starting funds. The book gives us a surprisingly good selection of gear options that we can have. Now, one thing with gear is outside of any special circumstances, like you have a backpack or something, you can only carry up to 12 items on your character, and that's it. So if I was to carry a pistol with 1 reload, that's going to be 2 items. I understand the reasoning behind putting this cap on it. This is to keep things pretty simple and not require that we calculate the individual weight or the individual encumbrance value of each individual item versus a certain pool that my character has. But just 12 items, that's it. Okay, but what if I do decide to carry more than 12 items? Let's say I'm looting a weapons stash, right? And I get a big old armload of Ran rifles. Now, I ain't trying to use them or nothing like that. I'm just trying to get away with all the loot. Well, according to the rules, you can't. So I think we should have some sort of encumbered rules in case a player character is for some reason carrying more than they normally be allowed to. Maybe they can't take any action other than just simple movement, or you have a multiplier for any action cost for any actions they do wish to perform, but something more than just a blanket, that's not allowed in this game. It should be something that's extreme enough that the player characters aren't going to want to carry more than their maximum 12 items that they can carry, but something that still allows it to be possible for those different times that the adventure warrants that they might need to carry more. Once equipment is purchased, character creation is done. It is really very easy to do this. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is action points, or what we call AP. Starting characters begin with 20 AP. This is important as we begin discussing game mechanics and how this system works. As I mentioned, Bounty Hunter doesn't use dice or cards or anything like that. It's done through action economy, and the foundation behind all of that is action points, which we just established your character starts off with 20 AP. AP are your hit points as well as your actions that you can do. And any time that you want to use a skill, when there's some sort of a stake or involved or some sort of notable risk for failure, you spend 1 AP in order to do it. So if I said that I wanted to climb a wall using my strength skill, then I would spend 1 AP since I have the strength skill, and I would automatically succeed at that. No rolling, no chance of failure. If you have a skill and available action points, you succeed at that task. In the event of opposed skill checks, such as sneaking past a guard who's actively watching a particular spot, then both characters spend 1 AP in order to do that, and because they're in opposition, that's now considered a draw because they both spend AP in order to do that. And this is going to continue going on every round until one character either decides that they don't want to spend any action points in order to do whatever that task is, or that one of them changes their strategy, or some sort of outside variable or something like that comes into play that doesn't allow one of them to do whatever it is that they're trying to do, or just one of the contestants just simply runs out of action points. There is an optional rule that's in here that certain tasks might be deemed more difficult than normal, such as climbing a wall versus climbing a slippery wall that would be more difficult. And for those, the Game Master might charge more than the standard 1 action point that more complicated tasks might require. What bugs me is the book says that I can't perform a skill that I ain't got. Now that makes sense for complicated skills such as trying to pilot a spaceship or maybe trying to do some surgery on my buddy. But what about something simple like trying to climb a wall or trying to use sneak if I ain't got skills in those? I mean, what's stopping me from just picking up a pistol even if I ain't skilled in it and trying to hit somebody with it? Yeah, sure, I'm probably not going to be that good at it, but it seems really weird that the rules say that I can't even try. I agree with that. Skills fall into one of 3 categories: physical, ranged, and mental. So instead of saying that a character can't even attempt a skill that they don't have, maybe have a penalty charge for that, such as 1 additional AP for physical skills, 2 additional for ranged, or 3 for an untrained mental skills, something like that. That way a character can still attempt those skills, but at a higher cost because they're not actually trained in that skill. Now let's look at combat. Combat, like many other games, is broken up into rounds, each round being about 5 seconds long. Instead of rolling or determining what the initiative order is, the round is broken into 2 phases. Every action in a phase is simultaneous, but characters wishing to go in the first phase must spend 1 action point in order to do that, and then any actions they perform are going to cost their own AP in addition to spending 1 just to go first. So you can get the upper hand by going before your opponent does, possibly getting to take them out before they have a chance to hit you, but it's going to cost you more AP in order to do that. The amount of damage depends on the weapon that's being used. Armor might soak up some of that damage, that way you don't take the full damage from that weapon, but any damage that gets through comes off of your action point pool. This creates a pretty cool dynamic because your action point pool is also your hit points. So when you start taking damage, such as this pistol, this thing does 5 AP worth of damage, so it's a pretty big deal if you get hit by one. But then considering that you're going to be spending some of your own AP just trying to be involved in a combat round, that starts making that point of 20 AP pool start getting lower and lower and lower. And it ain't that long in a combat before you start sweating bullets and you start thinking to yourself, oh my god, should I even go this round? Or should I even go first in this round? Or should I save those AP because my pool is getting pretty dang low? This method of action economy is what I find the most interesting about this game. It can be extremely fast as your character's AP pool goes from, plentiful and you've got, freely spending action points on anything that you want to do, to being very low and all of a sudden you're feeling all that pressure on your shoulders because your hit points are also your action points and they're starting to get dangerously close to 0 now. Once they do hit 0, your character is unconscious or just useless until they get more AP. If they take any more damage after that, the character is dead. This game can be pretty dang brutal. Now this is one of those areas where intellectually I understood all of this when I started the game, when I did my first session, but it really surprised me once I got to see it in action because combat and action scenes became a whole lot scary, a whole lot faster. Also, because we ain't got to deal with the time sink that's caused by all the players having to roll their initiative, roll to hit, roll their damage, that means that combat and bounty hunter goes pretty dang fast. Regaining AP can be done several ways. Meditation, medicine, or certain special abilities can do it. Having a member of your party who can restore AP makes them very, very valuable. Characters can improve over the course of playing, gaining more skills, more abilities, and of course more AP for their AP pool. In addition to any money that they might get by hunting down contracts, for every completed adventure they gain +1 to their reputation, which is essentially their character level. Every time a character gains a point of reputation, they automatically gain 5 AP to their pool, but certain reputation levels have a little bit more. They might gain new skills or new special abilities, as you can see pretty clearly on this chart. On top of that, the higher that a group's reputation is, the more that they're going to get paid for completing a bounty. If you want the best, you gotta pay for the best. Next is Starships. Your bounty hunter crew is going to need a ship to get from job to job, and each crew member should fill a specific role aboard that ship. Helm, engineer, gunner, etc. And in the likely event of them having a space combat, all these roles are going to be helpful for somebody to have them. The book gives us a pretty good selection of sample ships, ranging from light single-person fighters to large cargo haulers to full-size warships. The ship and space combat section is actually pretty good considering how short it is, but one thing that I wish we had was interior deck plans for the different ships that are available. For example, in our game under Guy, we flew the Akasha, which was a light escort ship, but Guy also gave us this deck plan for our virtual tabletop, and this thing is great. It helps you visualize the scale of the ship and everything about it, and players get to choose their own rooms, and they get to feel more of a personal connection to the ship because they know what the ship looks like on the inside. So I want stuff like that available for all the ships in this game. Maybe something that you could download from a website and maybe print it up yourself or put it on any virtual tabletop that your group might be using. I think it would just be a great tool for groups to have something like this, and not just for one ship, but for all of the ships that are presented in the game. I'd really like to see a deck plan or possibly more than one deck plan for each of those. The book also gives us some sample bad guys, robots, and alien creatures to use or let game masters use as example templates when designing their own opposition. There's a lot of great stuff that they managed to cram into this book here. Overall, I think that Bounty Hunter is a pretty cool little game. I'm extremely impressed with how much they managed to fit in this short book, but it doesn't make it feel like it's rushed. It feels very complete, like it's a much larger game than it really is, and that's a very difficult thing to pull off. I like how it encourages backstory and character personality through the course of character creation, and the great majority of my criticisms can easily be fixed by simple house rules, or such as how to use untrained skills or something like that. I think this would be a great game to introduce new players or maybe younger players to tabletop role-playing games, giving them a whole lot to work with and a very easy to digest size without having to do any sort of real math as you're calculating, 2 hits or initiatives or anything like that. I also praise it for including a starter scenario to help game masters see what a bounty hunter adventure should look like. I'm always going to praise any rule book that provides us with a free scenario. However, while the no dice aspect and the action economy that you have to do in this game is pretty cool, we just prefer the random chaos factor that you get from rolling dice. So many of our favorite gaming stories either involve really good or just really, really terrible dice rolls, and Bounty Hunter is just simply incapable of giving us those type of stories just due to the nature of the mechanics. Now this falls into personal preference more than any criticism of something being wrong with the game, but it is enough to keep Bounty Hunter from becoming something that I ever see myself using as our primary role-playing game. Now that being said, I would like to see more with this game. I'd like to see expanded ship guides, alien monsters, or more adventure modules. I'd like to see future support, additional supplement material that game masters and players can have access to. Now, Guy told me that there is going to be more coming with this game. It's not something that you just published once and they just walked away from. There's going to be translations into Dutch, Portuguese, Polish, and Hungarian in the next 6 to 7 months, he said. There are planned supplements for new gear, new rules, and future adventure modules that are going to be available on the Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which fully supports this game. He also mentioned a future game that's going to be called Mage Hunter, which uses the same Diceless rules mechanic, which I think that sounds pretty cool, because while this game is not for me personally, I see it as being a great game for somebody else. Once again, a huge thank you to Guy Sklanders for running us through a session of Bounty Hunter. I had a great time. Once again, links below if you want to check out that session recording. And just like to give you an idea of what this was like, look at our faces here. See that unbridled joy that we have? Now look at Guy's. Now that right there is the face of a game master fighting to maintain course for a bunch of fools having way too much fun. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews, how-tos, RPG philosophy, you just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, Bounty Hunters, you have a great day. My big beef with this game is that, we got rules for ran guns and phase guns. We ain't got no disintegrators in this thing. And it's like every third client that I talk to has to stop everything and go, no disintegrations. And I start wondering to myself, is this person just some sort of wannabe Sith Lord that's trying to look tough? Or maybe they're just making an observation about the rules. I find it really confusing.